Since Mr. Olbermann and I have been brought into this story by Fox News, in this national story of White House versus Fox News has decided to bring us into it. Let's set the record straight here on what's being alleged and how various presidential administrations handle the media. I have been in national talk radio since 2004, and during the Bush administration, I tried many times to get myself invitations to the White House when they held White House availabilities for administration staff, or even meetings with the president for talk radio hosts. And although these meetings were billed as talk radio meetings, just talk radio meetings, they were always in practice during the Bush administration exclusively for right-wing talk radio hosts. So I could never get an invitation, much to my chagrin. Here, for example, is President Bush in the Oval Office in October of 2006, meeting with right-wing commentators Laura Ingraham, Sean Hannity, Michael Medved, Mike Gallagher, Neil Bortz. I'm sure they're all very nice and diverse people, but I don't actually know any of them, but I do know that there's not a liberal among them. Here's a nice little class photo of right-wing talk radio hosts when they met with President Bush in August of 2007. There's Mark Levin, Neil Bortz, Hugh Hewitt, Scott Hennon, Bill Bennett, Michael Medved, Glenn Beck, Lars Larson, and Janet Parshall. This is what the Bush administration did, and they had every right to do it. They invited in talk radio hosts and columnists who agreed with them, and all of us who didn't agree with them were out of luck. Well, now it's the Obama era, and frankly, I did get an invitation to the White House, and the Obama administration also meets with conservatives, too. The last meeting like this that I was invited to was back in January, just before President Obama was inaugurated. It was roughly the same group of people who attended the meeting this week, give or take a few additions and subtractions. We met at the Obama Transition Office back in January. You want to know what happened the day after our meeting with the president-elect? He went to a gathering of conservative commentators at George Will's house in Chevy Chase, Maryland. Washington Post wrote it up at the time. They said, quote, during a 3-hour dinner conclave, Obama charmed 8 of the right's most prominent commentators. According to an Obama advisor at the time, Obama enjoys debating his ideological opponents more than his allies and plans further meetings with journalists of varying stripes during his term. Liberals could not get an invitation to meet with President Bush to save our lives. President Obama is now inviting us in. And he's also been talking to people on the right. You can be upset all you want that the president meets with people who you disagree with, but consider being fair and balanced in your criticism. At least admit that this White House has met with both sides, while the Bush White House did not. You should especially admit that if you happen to have been a member of the Bush White House during that administration.
It is demeaning the office of the president by taking the president and moving him from a person who ought to be talking to everybody and communicating through every available channel to saying, if you oppose me, if you question me, if you're too tough on me, by gosh, me and my people are not going to come on. We're going to penalize you. And that just is wrong, fundamentally wrong.
If you're too tough on me, me and my people are not going to come on. According to Mr. Rove, that sort of punishment is fundamentally wrong. That's something the Bush White House would never have done. Right, former Bush White House Press Secretary Dana Perino?
Believe me, there were some people who really wanted me from the podium to go after MSNBC, and I just thought it was a bridge too far.
And not only did you not go after them, you gave them interviews, as did the president. Sure. Gave them all interviews. You read Ronald Reagan's diary.
Towards the end, we didn't do a lot with MSNBC.
Oh, yeah. Right. MSNBC was frozen out at the end of the Bush administration, and Bush administration officials now admit it. The Bush administration had media wars of their own. You remember back in 2000 when President Bush said this about a New York Times reporter named Adam Clymer. Oh, yeah, big time. After that, would it surprise you to learn that President Bush never did one interview with the New York Times during his entire presidency? Not one in 8 years? And it wasn't just freezing out news organizations that they didn't like. It was paying conservative columnists to write articles that were favorable to their agenda. It was calling on fake reporters during White House news conferences that lobbed softball questions. It was publicly attacking NBC News for its reporting on the Iraq War. It was even threatening to arrest and prosecute New York Times reporters for reporting on illegal spying. You know, You can be upset with Keith Olbermann and with me all you want for attending a meeting at the White House with the president, but if we're going to fight about this, let's at least start with getting the record straight here. And last night, he was given the Center for Security Policy's Keeper of the Flame Award. To the extent that Mr. Cheney is still in charge of maintaining any sort of fire source, there should be no doubt that he's using it to try to burn the Obama administration. Last night, he said the new president is wrong on Iran, wrong on missile defense, even as the vice president is abroad right now talking about that. Vice President Cheney even said that President Obama is wrong to withdraw troops from Iraq, even though in Iraq, President Obama is keeping to the withdrawal plan that Bush and Cheney negotiated while they were in office.
Prime Minister Maliki met yesterday with President Obama, who began his press availability with an extended comment on Afghanistan. When he finally got around to talking about Iraq, he told the media that he reiterated to Maliki his intention to remove all U.S. troops from Iraq.
Right. You negotiated that. He's keeping to your plan. That's a problem now?
Waffling while our troops on the ground face an emboldened enemy endangers them and hurts our cause. Recently, President Obama's advisors have decided that it's easier to blame the Bush administration than support our troops. When we deployed forces 8 years ago this month, it was to make sure Afghanistan would never again become a training ground for killing Americans. It's time for President Obama to do what it takes to win a war.
President Obama must do what it takes to win this war. Now he tells us. See, those 7 years while he was ignoring and losing Afghanistan, Mr. Cheney had what it takes to win as a secret plan that he forgot to implement. Thank God he's still around and President Obama can ask him now how to win.
To completely rule out enhanced interrogation in the future in favor of half measures is unwise in the extreme. In the fight against terrorism, there is no middle ground, and half measures keep you half exposed. For all that we've lost in the conflict, the United States has never lost its moral bearings.
The former Vice President of the United States making the difficult argument that we can only hold on to our moral bearings if we say that torture will not be out of bounds. Which makes me want to ask a follow-up question about what exactly he means by moral and by the word bearings. But Vice President Cheney won't let me interview him or any members of his family, so I don't get to ask.
George W. Bush and I handed the new president and vice president both a record of success in the war on terror and the policies to continue that record and ultimately prevail. We had been the decision makers, but those 7 years, 4 months, and 9 days without another 9/11 or worse were a combined achievement.
Even beyond the 2 wars they started and didn't win, the Bush-Cheney record of 8 full years, of course, does include the worst terrorist attack on U.S. soil ever, for which we were left unwarned and unprepared and undefended by the government of Mr. Bush and Mr. Cheney. If I had that 8-year record, I suppose, too, I would ask people to please only judge me on
7 years, 4 months, and 9 days.
Or General Eaton, thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Rachel, thank you very much for inviting me on.
You said that Mr. Cheney was an incompetent war fighter. What exactly did you mean by that?
Well, first, Rachel, I've got to tell you that I'm not sure if I'm more embarrassed by the former vice president's remarks or by the applause that he received by my fellow Americans by these egregious comments that he made. But the former vice president, my comment that he's an incompetent warfighter, was party to the Rumsfeld-Cheney-Bush prosecution of war in Iraq and in Afghanistan. And they never properly established mission. They never properly established troops to task. And they have dumped onto the American soldier the expectation that they will pull their chestnuts out of the fire.